Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, I want you to try something for a second. Just imagine your bedroom tonight. When the sun goes down, you're going to walk into your room and seamlessly flip a light switch. Instantly, light is going to just flood the space, and you won't even think twice about it, right? It is entirely second nature to us. But what if that simple, everyday action has actually erased a fundamental part of our ancient biology? Today, we're exploring a massive, fascinating shift in our history and in our very own bodies.
99.9%. I really want you to think about that number for a second. Because for 99.9% of human history, we're talking over 300,000 years here. That light switch just did not exist. When the sun set, the world went completely pitch dark, like couldn't even see your own hand in front of your face dark. Every single one of your ancestors spent roughly half of their entire lives in near total darkness. They didn't even have candles for the vast majority of that time. So what did they actually do for all those hours? Well, the answer completely changes everything we think we know about sleep.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, Fire and the Original Classroom.
So to really wrap our heads around this lost night, we got to go way back, roughly 1 million years ago, to the very first major paradigm shift in human history, which was our mastery of fire. The earliest solid evidence for this points to Wonderwork Cave down in South Africa. Before fire, you have to remember, our ancestors were basically like every other primate. When the sun went down, you climbed a tree or you found a spot and you stayed absolutely still. Because moving at night meant you became food. Our eyes are terrible in the dark compared to predators like leopards, hyenas, and wolves. But a campfire? That creates this absolutely crucial 30-foot circle of safety. Inside that light, predators won't come. Outside of it, you die. Even modern anthropologists have noted that hunter-gatherers who wander away from the fire at night are significantly more likely to be killed.
But here is the real kicker. Fire didn't just offer physical protection. It literally restructured the human day. Before fire, your useful day abruptly ended the second the sun went down. Fire suddenly gifted our ancestors with 2 to 4 extra usable hours every single day after sunset. And over thousands of generations, those extra hours completely rewired our species.
There's this amazing study by anthropologist Polly Wisner, who spent years observing the Kalahari Bushmen. They're one of the last groups living close to our original ancient human lifestyle. She found that during the day, 80% of their conversations are purely practical. Who's hunting, which plants are ready to be picked. It's all logistics and work. But at night, sitting around that fire, a massive shift happens. 81% of their conversations suddenly become cultural and story-driven. Myths, jokes, incredible adventures about distant places.
Wiesner put it so perfectly. She beautifully argued that this fire-lit storytelling is quite literally where human culture was born. As she said, the campfire was the original theater, the original classroom, the original church. Those extra hours allowed humans to just pause, connect with each other, and imagine things entirely beyond the immediate present. It is basically where we learned to be us.
Which brings us to Section 2, the era of 2 sleeps. Now, the night wasn't just about what happened around the campfire. It was also heavily about what happened after. Historian Roger Eckertz spent 16 years playing detective, digging through historical records, and he uncovered a lost biological truth that had literally been hiding in plain sight. He found over 500 historical references spanning centuries. We're talking 1400s prayer books, private diaries, medical texts, all the way back to Homer's Odyssey. And they all casually mention this phrase, first sleep and second sleep. For centuries, historians had been reading these texts and completely mistranslating them, because they just assumed everyone always slept in one 8-hour block like we try to do today. They literally erased this divided sleep schedule from history just to fit our modern assumptions. So let's map out exactly how this worked. The ancient human night operated on a very distinct schedule. People went to bed shortly after sunset for a first sleep of about 4 hours. Then they woke up. They stayed fully, completely awake for 1 to 2 hours right in the middle of the night, a period they often called the watch. After that, they went back down for a second sleep of about 4 hours until dawn. This was not insomnia, guys. This was completely normal. This is exactly how every single human on the planet slept for thousands of years.
You might be wondering, what on earth did they do during this midnight watch? Well, pretty much everything. It was this vibrant, wakeful culture. People actually got up and visited neighbors. They interpreted their dreams while they were still fresh in their minds. They studied and reflected in the absolute quiet. Some just lay in the dark thinking. There's even a hilarious note from a 16th century French physician who actually recommended that couples use this specific time to conceive children because, according to him, they'd do it better after getting that first rest.
All right, let's transition smoothly into Section 3, science confirms our ancient code. Because history is really just half the story here. Biology backs this up flawlessly. In a really pivotal 1992 experiment, psychiatrist Thomas Ware, over the National Institute of Mental Health, took a group of modern volunteers and completely stripped away all artificial light from their lives. For one entire month, these people experienced 14 hours of pure, unbroken darkness every single night, mirroring our ancestors' environment. And the results? Absolutely staggering. Within weeks, without anyone telling them to do this, every single participant naturally reverted to that exact ancient cycle: 4 hours of sleep, 1 to 3 hours of quiet wakefulness, and then 4 more hours of sleep. That ancient programming was still inside them, just buried under centuries of light bulbs.
And here's where it gets truly wild. Weir also measured their hormone levels during that middle of the night wakeful period. He found that their brains were pumping out elevated levels of prolactin. Now, why does that matter? Because this is the exact same hormone released during deep meditation. The participants described feeling incredibly peaceful and reflective. This wasn't just a random gap in their sleep, it was an entirely distinct state of human consciousness that most modern humans have never ever experienced.
So let's slow down for Section 4, Trading Consciousness for Light.
Because we quite literally traded an entire phase of human consciousness for artificial light. Think about what actually killed this peaceful, ancient biological rhythm. It wasn't human evolution, it was human invention. In the 1600s, Paris starts installing street lamps to try and reduce crime. Then the 1800s bring us widespread gas lamps. Finally, in 1879, Thomas Edison commercializes the electric light bulb. And just like that, within a few short generations, 300,000 years of biological night programming was completely obliterated. The night went from being a time of deep, structured darkness to being constantly flooded with artificial daylight.
And we really have to remember that our ancestors took this darkness incredibly seriously. Take the word curfew. It actually comes from the French couvre-feu, which means cover fire. In medieval towns, ringing this bell wasn't about stopping juvenile delinquency, it was a signal for townsfolk to extinguish their fires because the night was meant to be completely dark and quiet. Walking outside after dark without a lantern was actually illegal in many European cities. The night belonged to sleep, to the supernatural, and people respected it and feared it in a way we just cannot comprehend today.
Now compare that terrifying, rigid darkness to our modern habits. On average, you and I now expose ourselves to 7 to 8 hours of artificial light after sunset every single day. We have totally conquered the night, but we've completely fractured our biology in the process. Because honestly, your body genuinely does not know the difference between a glowing phone screen and the blazing sun.
It's basically a biological domino effect. Our modern habits just wreak havoc on this ancient system. First, blue light hits your retina late at night. Second, your ancient brain interprets that light and says, "Oh, it's daytime." Third, it delays the release of melatonin, which is your absolutely crucial sleep hormone. And finally, your circadian rhythm completely fractures. We're just constantly tricking our own primal biology.
Okay, but before you throw out all your lamps, there is a really hopeful takeaway here. Researchers have found that you can actually reset this. If you go camping for just 1 week, I'm talking 0 artificial light, completely off the grid, your melatonin cycle will actually reset by nearly 2 full hours. Your body will naturally start producing melatonin at sunset again, exactly like our ancestors. It only takes 1 week for 300,000 years of programming to fiercely reassert itself. That is amazing!
Which brings us to a final lingering thought. We essentially replaced an ancient phase of human consciousness with what modern medicine now calls insomnia. But what if waking up at 2 a.m. isn't a disorder at all? Instead of lying there, filled with anxiety, staring at the ceiling, what if you realize that this isn't your body malfunctioning, but rather your biology remembering what it was built to do? You've got 300,000 years of history inside you, quietly waiting in the dark. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps you see your sleep and the night itself in a completely new light.